software is such a consequential part of our economy today. It's always interesting to take a look at how people are creating software. So you sit atop GitLab, and we'll get into kind of talking about how software happens in a second. But first, why don't you tell us what GitLab is? It obviously has to do with Git, and maybe tell us a bit about how it differs from other Git-related services that maybe have Git in the name somewhere.
Yeah, GitLab is developer software, so we help get you through the whole application development lifecycle. You can chat about an idea in GitLab, create an issue, plan that issue on an issue board, open up a terminal, commit your code, run your CI, your testing, your continuous integration, have a code review together, talk about the change you're proposing, roll out that change with continuous deployment, and get feedback about what effect it had and how long it took you to go through that. And it started as an open source project. So more than 1,200 people contributed to GitLab, and over 100,000 organizations are running their own GitLab server.
So how does it differ from GitHub, let's say?
Yeah, so two things. We thought it was really logical that if you're going to make collaboration software, it should be something you can contribute to. So we have two versions, and both are available online, and one of them is MIT licensed. It's completely open source. The other big difference is that GitLab is a more integrated platform. So for years now, we had integrated continuous integration. We're getting more into continuous deployment, having review apps as part of it. But also in the beginning, we come with a chat client if you want to. So it's more integrated. You can swap out parts. It works fine with Slack and Jenkins and all the other things. But if you want an integrated experience, it's all there for you to self-host.
So you have the option to either host it yourself or use it as a cloud service.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to learn that just a few minutes ago that my own company, O'Reilly Media's entire publishing workflow is hosted on a GitLab system. It's changed the way that we go about publishing books, the way that people collaborate on books. So you can start to see the impact right away.
Yeah, not only developers are benefiting from the ability to make a proposal in Git, but also for book writing, article writing. We're very happy with O'Reilly Media using GitLab. And you've also contributed back. So they made a front end for GitLab that they released. So we're really happy to have them as a customer.
Open source, hooray.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit at a higher level about how the way that people are developing software is changing. So go back. You can sort of think of this in maybe 3 phases, right? There was the waterfall kind of model, which a lot of companies still use. And then we started to get to more agile. And now you have kind of maybe a third approach, a new revolution on that. So lead us through what each of these represents in terms of what people are able to do.
Yeah, so we used to have waterfall. It was extremely rigid. And agile was a great relief, where there was a lot more flexibility. We think that agile has its problems. It's focused on one specific part. So we got DevOps on the end to get it into deployment. In the beginning, they're still a bit missing. How do we deal with ideas? And we think it's failing for large and/or distributed organizations. It's fine if you're a small team on one location, but if you're a multinational company or if you're spread out, it doesn't work. And I think open source has shown that there's something better. And we call it conversational development, where you try to reduce the cycle time, how long it takes you from idea to getting something out there. And that's the big difference between large organizations and small ones. Large ones take way too long. And if you can reduce that, you can do more frequent deployments. And it's more efficient, and it's better for the people involved.
So it changes the entire process of idea to production, right?
Yeah, the idea is that you start measuring how long every stage takes. And to do that, you're threading the conversation through all stages. So for example, where a security review used to be this thing, now you're blocked for 2 months because there's a backlog. Instead, you should involve the security people at an early stage, and they can comment, but they cannot stop the train.
So you're getting, it sounds like it becomes possible to draw the involvement of a lot of different groups within an organization as you go, which has always been a challenge. For security people, especially, I think they're often thrown, the code at the very end and said, sign off on this. it could be disastrous, but they're confronted with the choice to either reject it or accept it, right?
Yeah, and that's a confrontational thing that you don't want. And what open source has shown, there's a benefit to working out in the open, involving other people early. Doesn't mean you have to listen to everyone. There's still one security person that decides like this is good or not. But we think that teams can work better together by working out in the open. One thing you see happening is inner sourcing, where in large organizations, to break down the silos, people by default share all code they make with the rest of the company. So people can start reusing other stuff, can start contributing back, and prevent reinventing the wheel.
So what size companies are you seeing move to Agile? It used to be that smaller companies could use Agile and really outmaneuver the bigger companies who are stuck with these older processes. Are you starting to see bigger companies, maybe even governments, use more Agile methodologies and beyond?
Yeah, for sure. That was a big discovery. I started Gitlab.com, but a year later I learned the market was these large companies. So the majority of the Fortune 10 is using GitLab, and there's people using GitLab on a Raspberry Pi somewhere. The government has a obligation to be in control of things, so they're heavy users of GitLab, and many government institutions are customers.
So maybe there are some people here who work for bigger companies and wish they had a more agile process. What advice do you have for them? I mean, is an agile workflow something that you can BYO, so to speak, that you can, individual employees can start to institute it and build it up little by little?
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. People bring GitLab in at the team level, at the developer level, and from there it spreads. I think if you want to become more agile, there are two things. Your tooling should support it, and should support it without a lot of additional work. And the crucial point is when you normally would go from tool to tool, if you can make those steps smoother, it's better. The other thing is you should get feedback. Like, what is agile? How agile are you? Measuring your cycle time, saying, hey, it took us, between having an idea and getting it out there, it took us 8 months, and these are the months where it was stuck. If you have that data, you can go back and try to fix that and do it faster the next time. And we think that feedback is essential.
So how does it change the way that perhaps, let's see. So this is tricky. Do you see a future of possibly automated code deployment? There are aspects of your platform that automate a lot of the small tasks around coding. Do you see that kind of automation creeping into the coding process?
Yeah, there's more and more automation. As we get technologies like Docker and microservices, we're seeing that the number of repositories, the number of different code bases, it goes so far that it's really hard to do everything yourself, to assign that server yourself, to set up that CI yourself. So in GitLab, we're focused on doing that for you, so you don't have to focus on that as much. And we think, for example, every time you propose a change, you should have a copy of your application running with that change. It's called review apps, and we're supporting that out of the box, so that you don't have to do work, you don't have to deploy to some QA environment that your colleague also deployed to an hour ago, and now there are 2 changes on there. No, it has its own thing, so you can have that discussion just about the change you're proposing.
Do you see non-programming projects starting to show up on your platform and elsewhere when you look at kind of Agile as a method for working in general, not just programming? Maybe this kind of model is spreading?
Yeah, we see it spreading. And at GitLab, our marketing team, our finance team are also trying to reduce their cycle time. They want to do the minimum viable change, see how that's perceived, whether it's creating value, and then go from there. Instead of having a big project that goes from here maybe totally the wrong way, you make lots of small changes that add up and that end up at the right spot. So you don't have these big things that get out of hand and get canceled halfway through.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, I was thinking that it's a bit like, using the Agile methodology is a bit like driving a car rather than firing a cannonball, right? You're able to steer as you go and kind of adjust. And it's a lesson that a lot of kinds of workflows other than software can learn from, right? I mean, writing, for instance, I mentioned that O'Reilly now uses a Git-based collaborative environment for all of our publishing. You can imagine this sort of thing taking off in any kind of creative field, in business development, in anywhere, that you would have this kind of way of letting a team join in on something and collaborate in an organized way.
Exactly, and we think that's the future. I had a conversation with our investor, Aston Kutcher, about movies. Like, now you get the end product. Here's the Blu-ray disc. That's it. And here's the director's cut. Imagine if you'd get access to all the montage, all the footage, and you could do your own remix and remix it with something else. Imagine how much more creativity we would see in the world. And that's where we're going. And we want to make sure that people can use GitLab and remix GitLab itself to create that. There's a site called PenFlip where they forked GitLab and made it apply to books so you can write a book together. And that's beautiful.
What are you seeing in the way that really big teams work versus really small teams? For a while now, this has been a very different process. Big teams, very rigid. They take a long time to do things. Small teams can be very nimble. Is there a convergence? Like, if you're bringing better workflows, better platforms to the big teams, are they becoming more like small teams, or are they inventing a new way of working that's completely different?
Yeah, so far the large teams, they had the scale to deploy their solution, and the small team had like the agility. And we think the large teams can get the best of both worlds. So we're seeing our large customers trying to reduce the cycle time, watching those statistics. And then you can have the fulfillment of like, hey, we shipped something this week. I have a sense of progress, deliver what people want, but be able to do so at the amazing scale that you can work at a large company. So we think this is a big thing. Large companies, the smartest companies in the world, are adopting inner sourcing, conversational development, and trying to reduce their cycle time.
You don't often hear people in contexts like this point out that big companies have an advantage in a way. I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, you can take scale and sort of and use that to your advantage once you turn the development process into something that's a little more nimble.
Yeah, we have like the biggest consumer electronic companies in the world using GitLab, and if they make something, the next month we all have it in our pockets, and that's amazing, and that's something small companies don't have. So I think that by adopting open source workflows, it's shown that you can build a Linux kernel, and you can do this like this super complex project, and you can do it successfully as long as you keep the iterations short.
So you told me a little earlier that your company is entirely remote. Everyone works from home? Is that right?
Everyone works from the location they prefer. For many people, that's home. But if you want us to pay for a co-working space, we'll pay for it.
How do you keep productivity up in that context? A lot of companies have tried this and haven't liked the result.
Yeah, we think most people are more effective. If I listen to people, it's like, yeah, I worked from home for 2 days. It was great. I got so much done. So we think we're more effective. We're very mindful of that it requires some adaptations. So we do a lot more formal communication. Our investor emails go to everyone in the company. Our board meeting notes go to everyone in the company. Our executive team notes go to everyone. We even had a fundraising channel. So at some point, the developers were talking about liquidation preferences and stuff like that. And then the other thing is the social interaction. You shouldn't undervalue that. So every day we have a team call, and the majority spend people talking about their private lives. And people join our company and say, after 3 months, I get to know these people better than my previous company, even though I worked there for 3 years and I had 30 colleagues, and I worked here for 3 months and I have 130 people. Another thing we do is virtual coffee breaks, where we encourage people formally, like, it's okay not to talk about work the whole time. You can just hang out with someone. And of course, we bring people together on summits and other events.
Right. Last question, because we're just about out of time. Do you see any new trends coming up as you look at the way that people are using your platform all over the world? Any new ways that you see developers working?
Yeah, we saw that first they started adopting Git itself. Then now they're adopting CI. They're starting to adopt CD, getting the code out there. And we think that there's a great future for container schedulers, Kubernetes out there, for better monitoring like Prometheus. These are big trends, and at GitLab, we want to be at the forefront.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sid. It's been a pleasure speaking.
Thanks, Jon.
Thanks.